All right, class. So, do you guys remember how we were talking in the last couple of weeks about the branches of government? So, we've been talking about the executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and how the president, who was recently just nominated, has been inside the executive branch. So, I thought it would be interesting to link maybe a fiction book with what we've been learning about the government. So today we are going to start The Kid Who Became President. It's a very, very funny book about a 7th grader, very close to your age, who became the president. And through the book, we'll see his journey through the presidency and what he did to become the first kid president. So everyone should have a copy on their desk. Now, does anyone notice anything familiar on the front cover of the book? All right, good. So, if everyone can turn to page 1, we're going to first read the prologue. Now, does anyone know what the prologue is? The prologue is kind of like the overview of the book, maybe what it's going to be about. And in this case, the prologue is actually him writing a note to us. Okay? So, if everyone can turn to their page, it should be page 1. If you need to put your pointer fingers up and follow along with that, that is okay. If not, please make sure you're following along with the book because I will have questions at the end. All right? Prologue, the big flip-flop. At exactly noon on January 20th, I stood before the world, raised my right hand, not your left, your right, raised my right hand and recited the following words. I, Judson Moon, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. They saw that in America, any kid, rich or poor, black or white, can become president. Well, I was the kid who did it. The moment I finished taking the oath of the office that day, I was no longer a plain old 13-year-old from Madison, Wisconsin. I was a leader of the free world. I was the most powerful person on the planet. How did it happen? If you read a book called The Kid Who Ran for President, you know the incredible, improbable events that led up to me winning the last election. If you didn't, that's okay. To make a long story short, I was hanging around with my friend Lane Bernard after school one day when he jokingly suggested that a kid would make a good president of the United States. A kid like me. As a goof, I went along with the idea. Things kind of snowballed after that. Lane is a true genius, and he figured out how to raise millions of dollars to finance my campaign. He told me what to do, how to act, and what to say. He designed the bumper stickers and t-shirts. He directed the TV commercials. He even figured out how to get a constitutional amendment passed that would allow any American, regardless of age, to run for president. We got some breaks. The Democratic candidate that year happened to be an idiot. The Republican was a jerk. People seemed to like me for my goofy sense of humor and a devil-may-care attitude. That, plus the fact that I have very good hair. The next morning I knew I was ahead in the polls. By the time I fully realized that my candidacy wasn't all a big practical joke, it was too late. The Judson Moon for President campaign was like a runaway train. On election night, the American people chose me to be the youngest president of American history. I can hardly believe it really happened. Then the night I won the election, I resigned. That's right, I quit. I got on TV and basically yelled at America for being so stupid as to elect a kid president of the United States. Everybody was totally blown away that someone would turn down the chance to be president. My mother passed out on national television. Now, how do you guys think you would feel if you guys, as a joke, started running for president, and then all of a sudden you're ahead in the polls and you get the phone call and you won? How do you think you guys would feel? Maybe the same way he's feeling. Well, my fellow Americans, I'm here to say that I changed of heart. Politicians do that all the time, you know. It's called a flip-flop. One day you believe one thing, and the next day you take the opposite point of view. It's human nature. People change. Anyway, I decided to accept the presidency after all. This book is a story of my presidency. Can a kid, an innocent 7th grader like me, make a good president? Or did the job totally overwhelm me and make me fall all on my face, humiliating me in the office of president? If you like, you can turn to page 215 and see what happened. That is, if you're a pea-brain who has to have instant gratification. If I were you, I'd read the book. You might actually enjoy it. But it's up to you. This is still a free country. Signed, Judson Moon. Alright, so we are going to move on. Let's see. We're going to move on to chapter 1, A Chance. Alright, so you guys all should be at this point on page 5. The moment I told America I was refusing the presidency, pandemonium broke loose at the Moon for President headquarters in the grand ballroom of the Edgewater Hotel in Madison, Wisconsin. That's the town I live. In the 2 centuries since George Washington was elected, our first president, no candidate had ever used his acceptance speech to say he didn't want the job after all. Cameras flashed like fireworks. Reporters went running to the telephones to call their newspapers and change the headlines from "Moon wins" to "Moon wins" and quits. Television guys were elbowing each other out of the way trying to get to me for interview. My friend and campaign manager, Lane Bernard, just stared at me with his open mouth. The girl I had chosen to be my first babe, Chelsea Daniels, started screaming as if she'd seen a monster. My mom was in shock. She had to be taken to the hospital. Some people thought I was joking. Others were crying. People were running around as if somebody had pulled the fire alarm. Everybody was acting like the world was coming to an end. I just laughed. I stood at the podium watching everything swirl around me and laughed. It was such a relief that the election was over. I didn't care what happened. I never really wanted to be president in the first place. That night, when all the excitement had died down, I went home. There was a soft knock at the front door. I opened it, and Mrs. June Sayers wheeled herself in. Mrs. Sayers had been my babysitter when I was a little boy. She was old now and so crippled by Parkinson's disease that she needed a wheelchair to get around. Her mind was sharp, though, maybe the sharpest of any grown-up I knew. When Lane had asked me to select a grown-up to run as my vice president, I picked Mrs. Sayers right away. "Moon, do you have a way of surprising folks?" she chuckled. "I'm sorry," I replied. "I kind of messed things up for you, didn't I?" If I had accepted the presidency, Mrs. Sayers would have been the first African American and the first female vice president in American history. I feel bad about depriving her of that honor. "Forget it, Moon. I know what you're going to say," I told her as I wheeled her into the living room. "You're going to say I'm crazy. You're going to say I was always crazy, and I always will be crazy, right?" "No," Mrs. Sayers replied. "That ain't what I was going to say." "Then what?" "Child, I was born, women weren't even allowed to vote. At your age, I couldn't even eat in a restaurant where white folks ate. I lived through the Depression. My husband died fighting in World War II. And I lived long enough to almost become vice president. I've seen a lot of changes in my life. I learned a few things along the way." Her left hand was shaking, as it did sometimes if she needed to take her medication. "One thing I learned is that life is about chances," she continued. "We only get a few good ones. When a good chance comes your way, Moon, you gotta grab it or live with the fact that you didn't." "So you're saying I should accept the presidency? You and your pal Lane did an amazing thing, winning that election. Now you got a chance. A good chance. If you don't take it, for the rest of your days, you're gonna wonder what might have happened." "I can't be president," I said. "I don't know the first thing about president. I'd be terrible. Lane and I just tricked America into voting for me." "Sweetie, I lived through a lot of politicians. Very smart men. Lawyers, governors, senators. A lot of them turned out to be bums. You won't be worse. You could be better." "I just want to go back to being a regular kid again," I complained. "You want to grow up to be a trivia question?" she asked, challenging me. "Or do you want to make a difference in the world?" "I'm 13, I said, looking away from her. "What difference am I going to make?" That's up to you, Moon. The point is, you got a chance. And believe me, in the rest of your life, you're never gonna get another chance like this. In 200 something years, not many men have had this chance. Moon, all I'm gonna say is, you should think it over before deciding. It's not too late to change your mind. I thought about it, what she said, all night long. The next morning, I called Lane. So we're gonna stop there. So tomorrow, we're gonna finish chapter 2. So as of right now, after chapter 1, what do you guys think he's going to do? He said he's going to call Lane. So what do you guys think he's going to do? Hold that thought for tomorrow. Before we start, we're going to give all of our predictions, write them down on the board. And after, we're going to see if we were right about what he's going to do.